Oja Ngatang, a well-known school headmaster in Kamjong, threw a lavish feast on his daughter Awon's 16th birthday. Awon had just passed her matriculation with excellent marks, making Oja Ngatang a very proud father. Friends and family were invited. However, one of their relatives from Chowning, Mrs. Kaimila, was not invited to the feast. She was considered more horrid than any witch one had ever read of in books or seen in movies. She came to the feast uninvited all the way from Chowning, which was 20 kilometers away. It was a big mystery for the people of Kamjong, as nobody had informed or invited her. There were frightening rumors about Mrs. Kaimila in the neighboring villages about how she had killed many people by unleashing her spirit. She would let her unclean spirit attack her victims, disemboweling and killing them. Her identity was an open secret, but the villagers were helpless. In Tangkhul society, it is a taboo to talk about these dark practices of the so-called RAI in public. Only a few families would admit that they belong to the RAI bloodline. It is prohibited in the community to even accuse anyone of belonging to the RAI bloodline. If so, one could even be fined heavily by the RAI family. Mr. Maimi belonged to one such bloodline. On one occasion, he admitted that he inherited RAI from his mother. There was no history of RAI in his father's family, but ever since his father married his mother Singmi, who was from another village, the RAI passed on to his father too. Maimi and all his 5 siblings inherited RAI from their parents. Maimi affirmed that the unclean spirit would start acting up whenever he was too overwhelmed with emotions, either anger or affection. He could feel part of his spirit leaving his body and entering the body of his enemy or beloved, whichever was the case. Whenever this happened, the other person would fall sick immediately, and no amount of medicine could heal them until the spirit left the victim. Prayers of faith, especially by pastors and shamans, could remove such unclean spirits. Prayers of little faith had no effect, as a person possessed by RAI would burst out laughing, sensing the weakness of their poor faith in God. Mr. Maimi confessed there was no way to ward off his RAI other than praying. What Maimi admitted could be true, as we see less of these RAI activities with the advent of Christianity. But nominal Christians still exist, so to completely erase RAI seems impossible. Another thing to be noted is that those who have strong faith in God have never been possessed by RAI. As Awon's 16th birthday feast, which was celebrated in great gusto, came to an end, Mrs. Kaimila also set out to leave. Upon her departure, a huge black eagle landed on the rooftop of Oja Ngatang's house. Guests who had attended the feast were still in the house, elders and children alike. Oja Ngatang spotted the unusual bird, and he fetched his licensed gun and fired at the eagle, wounding its right wing. The eagle screeched hysterically in a human voice, which took everybody by surprise. For a moment, the onlookers thought a woman had been shot. A few minutes after the shot, Oja Ngatang was dumbstruck to find his daughter lying on the ground gasping for breath. He reached out for his daughter, but Awon shied away from him and said, "You invited all your relatives to the feast, but you did not invite me. You even bought the choicest pig, but did not share any portion with me, and now you have shot and injured me." It was Mrs. Kaimila's voice coming from Awon's mouth. Everybody gasped in terror. The youth present there were determined to take revenge if anything bad were to happen to Awon. The village pastor, Reverend Shomi, was called upon immediately to pray for Awon, but Kaimila's Rai refused to leave despite the prayers. Awon rolled onto the floor and screamed in pain. 5 strong men held her down to calm her, but she was too strong. She now possessed extraordinary strength and speed. Her parents assigned a few men to keep her in control, but she ran towards Chowning with great speed and left the men trailing behind. It took a lot of effort to bring her back to normal. She screeched at night and kept everybody awake, and this continued for almost a month. So the youth of Kamjong had an emergency meeting to find a solution. They decided to warn Kaimila to leave Awon in peace. In April 2005, the Kamjong youth, comprising of more than 100 men, left for Chowning. They carried guns, spears and swords to hunt down Kaimila. Upon reaching Kaimila's house, a ferocious dog started barking. One of the men fired at the dog, killing it instantly. But to their horror, the dog did not bleed even a single drop of blood. They butchered the flesh, but there was no sign of blood. Only Kaimila's husband, Mr. Angaima, was home that day. They announced that they had come to kill Kaimila. Mr. Angaima encouraged them to do so, for he was tired of his wife's evil charades, but warned them to be careful, as several unclean spirits accompanied her. Kaimila had grown too powerful, beyond any man's strength. Mrs. Kaimila had gone to the paddy field that day. When she returned, an army of Kamjong youth waylaid her. Awon's brother, Somi, dashed towards her, pulled her hair, and commanded her to leave Awon immediately, but she escaped and ran inside her house, refusing to come out. The crowd then threatened to burn down her house. At that moment, the tree outside her house began to shake violently without reasonable cause. There was no sign of wind or storm. They could hear Kaimila screaming loudly from inside. One of the men, Mr. Aning, fired a shot at a tree. The shaking tree died down, and there was pin-drop silence. A few minutes later, Mr. Angaima came out and announced that Kaimila has been killed. The crowd did not believe him until they saw the body of Kaimila lying inside, cold with clumps of her hair pulled out. Her husband showed no sign of grief. He then explained to the crowd that Kaimila's Rai could possess various life forms. The unclean spirits of Kaimila were in the tree when it had started shaking violently, frightening the crowd. By this time, half of Chowning village had gathered around the house. Nobody grieved the death of Kaimila, rather they thanked the youths for getting rid of her. There was a look of relief upon each villager. Mr. Angaima bid them a peaceful farewell and assured them that Awon would be all right. With mixed feelings, the youths thanked Mr. Angaima and left for Kamjong. A medicine man from a neighboring village later revealed that Kaimila was just short of one head, and if she had succeeded in taking the life of Awon, nobody would be able to kill her, for she had more than 59 lives to her credit. It was already 9:30 in the night when the young man reached Kamjong. They went directly to Ojangatang's house to find out if Awon was all right. To their amazement, Awon was well and alive and even came out to greet them. Kaimila had possessed her for almost a month, but Awon was oblivious of everything that had happened to her. Awon was baffled when everybody came to shake hands with her, expressing utter joy. Ojangatang gently reminded her that she had been unwell since her birthday feast. Awon stated that on her birthday celebration, she heard the sound of gunshot and she could not remember anything after that. "It is a good thing that you are unable to recall anything, dear," said her father, patting her shoulder. A few months later, Reverend Athing, a relative of Kaimila, petitioned a case against the youth of Kamjong, the case was taken up by some of the national workers and the youths were heavily fined. Among the Tangkhuls, there are people who refuse to acknowledge or let the world know about the existence of such a thing as RAI in their society. Most people in the community would not associate with them, and especially the older generations would never give their children in marriage to those possessing the RAI bloodline. No matter how liberal they are, they find it hard to come in terms with it. People living in the village or small communities could easily identify the activities of RAI people, so they carry a stigma with them in society. Some people in such bloodlines would be driven out from the village, and they had to either stay away from the village proper or had to leave the village, never to come back. There are myths and stories that abound around the world which are similar with the RAI of the Tangkhuls. Among the many evil eye that exist in different parts of the world, Ikiryo or Shoryo, living coast of Japan, comes closest to RAI. In his book Kazu Hayake Yagyo, Sekien Toriyama talks about Ikiryo and its characteristics. Here, it is believed that if a sufficient grudge is held against someone, all or part of the perpetrator's soul would leave the body and appear in front of the victim to harm or curse them. Possession is another means by which the Ikiryo are commonly believed to be capable of inflicting harm. Ikiryo also take possession of another body not out of vengeance but for love or infatuation. The Japanese believe that the spirit would leave the body of a living person and subsequently haunt other people or places, sometimes across great distances. Here are some crucial information from the testimonies of the RAI bloodline, real-life encounters, traditional beliefs of how they acquired such demonic spirits, and how the shamans treat such possessed people in Tangkhul community. Ayao, a born-again Christian, professed her experiences of being born in a RAI bloodline. She had 4 sisters, and no man would dare date them. Ayao was the most beautiful woman in her village, yet men refused to court her. In the city, Ayao would get several proposals from men, but in her hometown, no man would look at her or even speak to her. Similar was the case with her 4 sisters. They had no friends, and whoever walked past them would whisper behind their back. They felt like they were enveloped in a social stigma which they were unaware of. They inquired about this strange treatment being meted out to them by everyone around them, to their mother. After a volley of questions from the daughters, the mother finally revealed that they were a cursed family. One day, their mother asked them to come out to the courtyard. When an eagle flew by, the mother pointed to the sky and asked, "Can you see the eagle?" The moment they said yes, the eagle fell to its death. Then the mother continued, "This is the reason why people shun us." The daughters were shocked after witnessing the eagle incident. They had heard about people with RAI, but little did they know that they would be one among them. The RAI daughters later learned that the family had inherited it from their ancestors and that it was hereditary. How did they become an accursed family in the society? Why should they live with the stigma when it was not their fault? Is this what God created us for? With all these questions in mind, Ayao was determined to find the root cause rather than being distressed about it. She believed in the word of the Bible that says, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here." 2 Corinthians 5 verse 17. She believed that there was no room for unclean spirits in her body because she believed that Christ's spirit lives in her. She started reading the Bible more diligently. She also read up a lot of books on demons and fallen angels. From the readings of G.H. Pember's Earth's Earliest Ages, she was able to come to a conclusion that during pre-Adamic age there existed on the earth some beings with spirits, and that these beings also joined Satan in his rebellion against God. After they were judged by God, these beings lost their bodies and became disembodied spirits. This is the reason why demons want to possess a physical body. She also found that the angels and spirits were classified as two different kinds of beings. It is believed that the demons that were punished to live in the deep waters entered the bodies of some of the children of Adamic race. Some entered the body of human beings and made it their dwelling place. These humans who were wicked themselves could not ward off these evil spirits from their body, and so they remained with them and their offsprings even to the present day, which the Tangkhul Nagas called RAI. So Ayao concluded that only a godly life could ward off these demons.